Hey, hi there, everybody. Hi, Tim. This is the Oil and Gas Business Builders podcast. Welcome to the show. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you very much.
Awesome. We have our guest here today, Timothy C. Kim. He is founder and CEO of IBV Energy Partners, which is a leading utility scale solar and storage company with over 8 gigawatts of project capacity across the US. That's awesome. I'm glad you could join us, Tim. Welcome to the
Thank you.
show.
Appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me. This is a real pleasure to be here, especially on the Oil and Gas Builders podcast, which, one has to question, why is a renewable energy company on here? So we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. Well, so on that point, why are we here, with a renewables solar guest on the Oil and Gas Business Builders podcast? Well, there has been a flurry of activity in the oil and gas industry recently of oil and gas businesses who've been acquiring assets in solar and assets in renewables. And so, why is that? Why are the oil and gas companies acquiring renewables assets? And, they're acquiring both development platforms, project portfolios. And, this is not really a new trend. The oil and gas industry has always been a big investor in renewables research and, you know, just thinking about the future. But I feel like the future is here, the future is now. And so it's important to think about renewables, being oil and gas people. How are the renewables investments going to help us get ahead of the curve in ESG and RECs? And, that's, just two areas, but there are other fronts as well. And, even just thinking about our planet and the future, and even just meeting our energy needs, which continue to grow every year. And so it's important to think about uh, how we're meeting our energy needs, um, sustainability, and meeting our company needs, the needs of our companies to meet our goals in ESG and RECs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, you know, you bring up a very good point here. And the question is, why are oil and gas companies, some of the largest ones around the world, actually acquiring development companies in the renewable energy space? Not just projects, individual projects, and not just a pipeline of projects, but the actual company. And all of its fixed assets and whatnot. Um, this question is an interesting one because if you think about it, yes, oil and gas they have been involved in renewable energy to climate change, in one way or the other for many decades. But it's really the last 12 months that we've seen a flurry of activity. So let me just give you an example. I think last 12 months, I mean, this is just a few of these companies. Repsol, for instance,
Mhm.
acquired a developer called Hecate, a renewable energy solar company called Hecate. Shell acquired Savion and Silicon Ranch. Total acquired Core Solar and Clearway Energy. Enbridge acquired Tri Global Energy, and the list kind of goes on and on and on. So, what is actually going on here? Um, you know, Let me just kind of start from the beginning here, and we'll work our way through this. Um, about 3 years ago, our company, we made a decision to pivot our development strategy from one of general development to that of targeted development. That is targeting decarbonization and even more specifically, scope two emissions of and scope two emissions of the heaviest carbon companies. So today we're working with fossil fuel companies across PJM, MISO, ERCOT, the main power markets in the United States, at least in the middle of the United States, to reduce Scope 2 emissions by doing two things. One, selling clean power to service their pipeline and terminal operations. And two, co-development of assets, so they also have an equity stake in the actual projects. The project life cycle of a solar project is about 40 years. It's 40 years that is on par with natural gas and coal-fired power plants. Much easier to repower, by the way, as solar. To extend the longevity, extend the life of a solar asset that's already 30 years operating than it is to retrofit a coal or nuclear or nat gas plant. We believe, and the reason why we made this decision is not just financial, not just smart strategic, is not just Scope 2, but we believe that from a philosophical approach, it cannot, tackling climate change, tackling, addressing decarbonization cannot be an us versus them nature. That we have, and we've seen a new generation of energy leaders, myself included, including other executives on my team. A new generation of energy leaders on both sides, the oil and gas and renewable energy field. And I find that my colleagues on the other side, especially in the oil and gas world, are just as excited, if not more excited, at the prospects of partnering with renewables companies. The benefit to them, to Repsol, Shell, Total, these companies are just quite. It is not just a matter of balance sheet, right? So it not just provides emission reduction in Scope 2 areas and improved PR. Let's be honest. That's one aspect of it. Greenwashing is days of the past, but it's also a matter of P&L, profit and loss. The levelized cost of solar electricity is competitive. And although it has materially increased in the past 24 months due to exogenous and policy implications, so has energy as a whole, actually. But if you look at the energy that comes off of renewables, solar and wind, let's just be more specific there, versus coal, nuclear, natural gas, you see the dichotomy in risks. On one hand, solar and wind has free feedstock. You don't need to pay for the sun to shine or the wind to blow, in other words. So it is quite divorced from the materials risk, or excuse me, the commodities risk that we see in this world, and we have seen in many decades. However, the risk is still present in terms of materials risk, panels, inverters, major equipment, things of this nature, which are very prone to policy changes and federal and decisions at the federal policy level. Another reason is that, as you mentioned, RECs or renewable energy credits, or what we call RECs, are also becoming more expensive and valuable. And investing in today's pipeline of REC projects is not just a matter of good decision making, but buying at today's prices for what will increase precipitously on an annual basis has real balance sheet implications as well. So these are the reasons why we have seen and we will continue to see oil and gas penetration into the renewables market. And I for one, welcome it with open arms. I think we should actually have a lot more, and I think we will in the coming 4 or 5 years. I think the public will be actually astounded by the amount of activity in the oil and gas world, that works together with renewable energy companies to target decarbonization and increase the value of a lot of these pipelines.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you had mentioned that you and IBV have really led the charge into fossil fuel dominated states, states like Kentucky, Louisiana, Texas, maybe. I'm in Texas. But that you guys are the largest developers of renewable energy projects to date in Kentucky and Louisiana.
Mhm.
And what kind of challenges have you experienced in regards to breaking into those markets that are so heavily oil and gas dominated?
Yeah. Um, well, there's the obvious challenges, right, of informing the the public of what constitutes renewable energy and the benefits of renewable energy, not just from how does it affect your bottom line dollars, but also, the tax benefits to counties.
Mhm,
Look, anytime you enter a new market, people are automatically suspicious, and rightfully
mm,
so, right? Because people don't understand it, and they want to
mhm,
understand it. The way that we look at breaking into markets and the way we look at informing the public is not one of convenience,
mhm,
but is one of collaboration. In other words, it is upon us to conform and collaborate with a state, a county, a municipality that has never seen a solar panel
mm,
before. Um, and we go to great lengths to inform the public, such as holding as
mm,
many town halls as we need to, one-on-ones,
mm,
providing the greatest transparency to county officials. But yes, um, there is a difficulty, that's maybe an understatement even, of breaking into heavy fossil fuel markets. I will say one thing though. Let's just take the case of Kentucky. We signed the very first renewable energy PPA in the history of the state.
mm. Oh,
We
wow.
signed it with Louisville Gas and Electric and
Mhm,
Kentucky Utilities. They own gigawatts of coal-fired generation,
mhm,
right? And it was a club deal. It was actually with LG&E and KU, as well
mhm,
as Toyota Motors and Dow Corning.
mhm,
This plant is 100 megawatts in size, located in Hardin County.
mhm,
It sits on private land, and it will part of it will provide power to the county, and part of it will provide power to the operations of Toyota Motors, which, by the way, they make the
mhm.
RAV4 in that factory.
Oh,
Right.
I have one of those.
Oh, well, you should definitely be cheering us then. They make
Awesome.
the RAV4 there, and Dow Corning, which is also a major manufacturer in the state.
Mhm,
Another major company in the state is Amazon. If you've ever returned
mhm.
anything, if you ever bought anything on Amazon, returned it, just look at where it goes to. It's Kentucky. Um,
Okay.
so it was Toyota Motors and Dow that
Mhm,
approached Louisville Gas and Electric and Kentucky Utilities and said, "Listen, um, we see the benefit, financial and you know PR and all these other benefits, direct benefits of having clean energy. Can
mhm,
we try to do something?" And the answer to LG&E's and KU's credit was absolutely. Um,
mhm,
you know, just because you are a utility, and I think they've shown this the most, that owns your own generation of coal-fired power plant, doesn't mean that you can't work with renewable energy, generators. Um,
mhm,
because at the end of the day, what is your goal if you're a utility? You know, yes, you want to provide you know dividend yields to your shareholders, but if you miss out on the bigger picture, which is providing the best customer service and being responsive to your power customers, especially your largest ones,
mhm,
then it's just a matter of time before those dividend yields just keep shrinking and shrinking, shrinking
mm,
because they will leave you. And we've seen that in Nevada as well,
mm,
where several private entities, especially casinos, have left
mm.
NV Energy's service territory or have left their contractual arrangements and going off and procuring power on their own.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and it's a big deal. It was a big deal back then. And by the way, they have to pay something like $50 million in order to break that. So it's not just
Wow.
again, it's not just greenwashing. It
Yeah.
is real dollars. So
Wow. Wow. That's crazy.
yeah.
Speaking of crazy things, I know a lot of people in Texas had concerns. I mean, we went through the Texas winter storm in February of 2020, and we basically our power grid shut down here,
Hmm.
and we were all sitting in 17-degree temperatures in our homes without heat.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people who believe that was due to renewable energy failures. What is your comment on that?
Well, people don't need to take my comment and what I say. It's been debunked. It's been debunked many times. The articles, the studies articles, everything is out on the internet now. I think, and I don't, again, I want to make sure that we get our messaging right and not cross over the lines here, because obviously there were political, machinations behind, trying to demonize renewable energy in the state.
Mm.
But uh, none of that is true. Um, and if it were true, then one has to then ask themselves, I mean, these days with the amount of news,
Mm.
you can only do so much to convince people. But at the end of the day, I would just ask a simple question. If that was true, then why do politicians in the state, why do elected officials in the state, why do municipal leaders in the state keep on issuing and keep on desiring renewable energy projects to come
Mm.
online? Why are they pushing for this if it's
Yeah.
such a bad thing? So it's not.
I guess not to mention, why are they able to run wind farms and solar farms in like Germany and the Netherlands?
Right, right. That's exactly right. Um,
So,
yeah, I think we are not a type of company. We're a very practical company. We lean towards investments and development first and foremost.
mhm,
But I think that there is an understanding now, especially with what's going on in Europe, that energy security is economic security, and that
mhm,
cannot be divorced. So Texas is one of the biggest. Just Texas alone. Texas, California, alone are one of the biggest economic entities in the world. If
mhm,
Texas was its own country, and so forth and so on.
mhm,
And I think that every time these hurricanes come through, I used to live in Florida for quite some time. The question
mhm,
is my local utility ready? Will I, in sitting here in a first world environment, have to live in a third world environment for weeks at a time, or will I be able to make plans that will, save my family and take care of my family? And I think that broader question goes to the question of, you know, is the state doing all it can to increase the mix of energy, regardless of what kind of energy it is, nuclear, hydro,
yeah,
whatever, renewables,
mhm,
or is it demonizing, one, energy platform for another, which always has a negative outcome. If you look at
mhm,
many of these other states have done the same or trying to do the same.
yeah, yeah, and ironically, or not ironically, but, I do follow these types of things, and I was actually looking at ERCOT's daily power, allocation, through time the other day on YouTube. There's like a YouTube video that you can look at that, and, just kind of seeing how our power mix has changed over the past couple years since, like, 2017. And, our power usage is growing. And, I feel like if we don't, like you just said, if we don't embrace every type of, power generation that's at our disposal, and, continue to build that, that, we may have difficulty meeting our power needs
Yeah.
going forward. So,
It is certainty that there will be difficulty. Let's just think about a thought exercise here. Uh, if the world's population froze today, in other words, no more births or no more deaths, right? It's
mhm,
just nobody aged another second, and we just
mhm,
kept on being the 7 billion or so population that we are, and we take that out 20 years from now. If we do not do anything to increase capacity, there would be blackouts all around the world. Why? Because everything from your device to your vehicles to your home equipment is using up more power. Uh,
yeah,
the grid is aging. Power
mhm,
generation, like coal, natural gas, and eventually wind and solar, they will age out, where their parts
mhm,
of machinery will break. Um,
mhm,
So it is not a matter of, hey, do we really need this? But it's a matter of, can we get it even faster? Because,
Yeah.
if you look at your cell phone today versus 5 years, I bet you anything that it uses a lot more power. And that's
Hmm.
just your cell phone alone.
Yeah. So, you shared a couple articles with me, and one of the really interesting things I thought was you talked to these articles talked about how oil and gas companies tend to have a lot of extra land available, their oil and gas leases, etc.,
Mhm.
where they're not necessarily using that land all the time, and that could be, a prime location to put solar panels. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little about that?
Yeah. So first of all, the articles we write a lot of we not a lot, but we tend to write articles consistently, and that's a credit to our communications manager Matt Chester, as well as our power marketing and analytics team headed by Manoj. We
Mhm.
printed three articles in the Energy, Oil, and Gas magazine. I believe there's articles 206, 207, and 208. You can find them on our website, our new website that will be launched tomorrow. It's not on our current website, but by the time hopefully people see this podcast, if they're not seeing it live, that website will be up. But essentially, we talked about the why renewable energy, and we kind of expanded on why renewable energy companies are working with oil and gas companies. And one of the articles we did mention about land, and how that could be a collaboration point. Um, if you think about a pipeline, right? You have easements along those pipelines, right? Some could be hundreds of feet, and if you accumulate all of those easements together, that runs either through a state or three states or the entire country, right? That is a phenomenal amount of land, and that
Mhm.
is land we could build solar power plants on. Um,
Wow.
so right, so if you quickly do the math, and we've done it. We've taken a look at the layouts, the designs. Um,
Hmm.
it is feasible that you could power probably half the United States
Wow.
power requirements just by building off those easements. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, we're talking about millions of miles of pipeline, right? And if every pipeline has about 100 foot of easement, some of them have a lot more than that. Then that quickly adds up.
Yeah.
So we are working with two oil and gas companies right now. Two of them are very well known companies, pipeline operators as well, um, to discuss this and to understand what is their what are their short, medium, and long term targets, and how do we get
Mm.
there? How do we achieve that from a very from a cost basis, right?
Yeah.
Because if we lease the land for $1, and the land component is one of the most expensive part of developing solar,
Mhm.
that we could cut out that savings, and pass it right through them. Um,
Mm.
and that's basically for land that's not even being used.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
So, so Tim, I had the privilege of reading your bio before we got on together, and I must say I was very impressed. Tim also held senior roles in international finance before founding IBV in 2017. And he got his start in the renewable energy industry as a deal team member with KfW IPEX Bank, which is Germany's largest international project finance institution. And he also co-founded the U.S. Export-Import Bank's Office of Renewable Energy Finance, which is also very impressive. And he held roles as head of M&A and finance at two renewable energy investment companies, where he directed financial structuring, asset acquisitions, and divestitures and pricing analytics. And he also was an officer in the U.S. Navy. He was deployed to Liberia as a member of the U.S. Military Observer Group and Kuwait and Iraq as a platoon leader and Naval Coastal Warfare Group 1, a key element of Operation Iraqi Freedom. So, Tim, you have a very interesting background. You were military. Sounds like a very impressive military career before you got into the private sector. And tell us a little about you and your history and what led you to founding your company, and sort of maybe talk about where you are now, where you came from. Did you have challenges along the way? Of course, I'm sure you
Yeah,
did.
yes. Well, yeah, similar to my background is actually our co-founder, Robin Sias, who's our executive VP and head of development. He also served 10
Mhm.
years
Oh, wow.
as a U.S. Army officer, and then went to go work for some of the largest renewable energy and energy, actually, just energy companies in the world. And then him and I met at a solar investment and development company in 2016. So he was there from the start. But yeah, I was born and raised in a small town in Southern California, and as soon as I could leave home, I decided to just go to the other side of the U.S. So I went to school at NYU, and then after that, or during that, I obtained a scholarship in the U.S. Navy, um, and that gave me the opportunity to, I'm a first generation opportunity to serve the country while seeing the world. Got a little bit more than I bargained for, to be quite honest. Once 9/11 happened, but
Oh,
yes, yeah, I was. An officer in the Navy for about 6 years, a little over 6 years. Actually, got it kind of extended during this time frame, and served on ground teams both in West Africa and Liberia, and during the start of an invasion of Iraq. I thought for a while actually of going career, and sometimes I'm perfectly happy where I am today. But one of my very good friends who served with me just got his appointment to admiral. And every now and then I think about, okay, if I had stayed in, maybe I'd be wearing that 1 or 2 star myself. Um, and that always, and then I have to shut that thought down because I can kind of get depressed. But I will say there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this podcast. And many of those have served in uniform. And there's nothing like it. There's no feeling like it in the world. Not about the money. It's not even about yourself. It's about being part of a team, a storied legacy, especially serving in the U.S. military.
Mhm.
But after that, I left and I went to got my graduate degree at Johns Hopkins University, studied international economics. Um, and then I went to go work in banking in Germany,
Mhm.
where I financed a number of the transnational deals in the
Mhm.
power and transmission space. Um, I would say that I wouldn't say that there's a lot of written about the transition from military to civilian life. And
Mhm.
I can understand why. I mean, it's depending on what your experience was in the military, it could be very difficult. I didn't find that to be as challenging so much as finding myself in an environment where uh, there are more guidelines and rules. I would have to say, um,
Mhm.
in the military, you work in a very strict environment, obviously, where there are rules that have to be adhered to, and you find out creative ways to meet your goals, even though the rules don't are not always so flexible. In the private sector, there are more guidelines, right? So how do you get from
Mhm.
point A to point B? Well, you could do, in the military, there's maybe one or two, ways, and in the private sector, there's 100. Um, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's kind of like going to a grocery store and seeing 50 cereal boxes. It's a lot easier to actually have two choices in front of you, right? I mean,
Mhm.
rather than 50.
Yeah.
So I found that to be kind of interesting, especially working in such a fast-paced environment. But I would tell you that you and I spoke a little bit before this, the challenges of starting a company. Um, I would have to say there are three main challenges that I saw, and that is positioning, capital, and talent. So positioning,
Mhm.
gaining traction, understanding your strategy, and being able to stick to your strategy, and not wavering. Um, you know, not knee jerking around, because strategies are like a big ship. You turn that wheel, and it takes a while for that to, for your work to, for your decisions to actually prove out or not.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we were a new kid on the block as a renewable energy development company, even though this industry is new, the fact of the matter is it's grown old in a very short amount of time. That was a very challenging, you know, um, thing to do. The second is capital. That's probably not new to anybody who started a company. Securing capital, not only for your immediate investments, but for your follow-on activities as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud to say that our parent company is IB Folk Group, which is one of the most reputable and probably now the largest pure solar independent power producer in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're also backed by DIF Capital Partners, Dutch Infrastructure Fund, a very large infrastructure fund that understands, power generation. And so, not having to go up that learning curve and educating investors on what we are doing, how we're doing it, was very, very key to us in securing that capital, I think. And then third, always talent, talent, talent. You could have the best positioning, the best strategy. You could have $1 billion or an infinite amount of capital, but if there's nobody to execute your vision, or people who are not the right fit, many business cases have been written on this. It all comes down to talent, and I'm proud to say
Mm-hmm.
that I think we have the best staff, pound for pound, in this entire industry, and very, very proud of them and the work that they do. To give you an idea of this, we have 8 gigawatts in the queue. That means we have about 50,000 acres of under our control across 20 states, almost 20 states.
Mm-hmm.
We've done this with an average of 14 people over 5.5 years. Today we have 22, but the
Mm-hmm.
average has been about 14. If you look at another company, and you could say, okay, well, I'm bragging. I'm just stating a fact here. I've looked at many companies, both in my banking world and outside. The closest company that does this has about 60 people. So we have about one third, um, roughly. So I think we have the ability to expand to scale, and that is
Mm-hmm.
always something that I think every startup founder needs to think about, because you may not think you need to scale, but if it comes time that you have to scale and you are not prepared, you know, many companies have gone under because they have grown too fast. And that
Yeah.
notion of growing too fast means that they weren't able to scale correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we think a lot about as well.
Mm. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you too. And I work with customers. My company, we do marketing strategy, and I work with customers to get their teams on the same page. Because even when you have the right people, then you still want to make sure that everybody's sort of marching to the same tune, that everybody's aligned with the direction you're moving.
Mhm.
But uh, Tim, can you share with us? So you mentioned, we talked about some articles that you guys have written that would be interesting to our oil and gas listeners. Could you let us know where we can find those?
Yeah, so tomorrow they will be on our new website. We're revising our website, so they will be on there in the news section, as well as in the net zero section. So those can be found in those. But give us a day to launch that. Is a hard launch for tomorrow. Um,
Okay. What's the URL, or what's the
it's www.ibvenergy.com. I as in India, B as in boy, V as in Victor.
okay, ibvenergy.com.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, and thank you for being here. Do you have any last thoughts before we close out?
No, it's been a privilege to be on this podcast, and we're trying to. I think the takeaway that I want to leave your listeners with is that you know many folks are surprised of when there is a collaboration between renewable energy and oil and gas. Down at the
Mhm.
balance sheet level. But this is going to be, in my opinion, the norm,
Hmm.
because I do believe that the next generation of leaders in both spaces have an understanding that to tackle the climate change crisis, to have a sustainable business in the energy field, you need to collaborate. It cannot be a winner take all, zero sum game. And so we are doing our part. IBV Energy is working with several oil and gas companies, and look out for our announcements in the future.
All right. We will keep an eye out for those. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a really fascinating conversation and privilege to have you on. And we will keep an eye out for you and IBV's website and information in the future.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
and
it.
thank you to
Bye.
all of our listeners. And we will see you next time. Thanks.